Suddenly, a wolf-like creature shot out of the bushes and jumped at Adukas. He narrowly avoided the creature's claws, and the two were now facing each other. The fairy wolf protecting his companion and her horse, his attacker in front of the bush. Cheyenne could hardly believe her eyes as she looked at the creature. But that... it doesn't exist! The wolf-like enemy shone in all white and was surrounded by fog, signs of the same color, which looked like those of her black arrows. What the hell is that? There is nothing white in nature, except for the small spots in our eyes, and it is surrounded by a shimmering fire-like aura. Maybe an experiment that escaped from the research lab? Cheyenne's thoughts were interrupted, however, when the white something pounced at Adukas again and began a wild brawl. It seemed incredibly strong and took a toll on the already exhausted fairy wolf. He managed to free himself from the clutches of his attacker with great effort, and Cheyenne took the opportunity to escape. Before the white wolf could attack again, Adukas was already out of reach. The three companions were chased for the second time that day, and the girl wondered how often they would have to run away today. The trees flew past them again, and Falconheart ran as fast as he could. The fairy wolf had fallen a bit behind the stallion, but continued to do his best to keep up. The white creature didn't seem to chase her anymore. Probably it wasn't fast enough. But to make sure they were safe, Cheyenne kept up the pace. In the distance she saw a fallen tree trunk lying down. Falconheart will probably have to jump. Quite risky in his current state, but we have to get over there. The idea of just riding around outside just didn't occur to her. The girl was currently unable to think clearly, so she let her horse run directly towards the tree trunk and prepared for the jump. The stallion did not seem to agree with her plan, but he trusted his owner and did what she asked of him. They came closer and closer to the fallen tree. Only now did Cheyenne realize how big this log was, but it was too late to stop. Falconheart jumped off. However, he was far too exhausted to pull his legs wide enough. With a muffled sound, his left hoof hit the obstacle and the horse stumbled in the air. Cheyenne fell abruptly to the left forward on the neck of the stallion, but managed to stay in the saddle. As if that wasn't enough, it went further down on the other side of the tree trunk than expected. Behind the tree was a slope as steep as Falconheart was big, and they fell down. The horse did his best to regain his balance and prepare for the hard landing, but his legs could no longer withstand the weight of the four-legged friend, and immediately after the rough approach they buckled and he fell to the knees of his front legs. The girl on his back slid on the horse's neck, and Falconheart raised his head to prevent his owner from falling. When Cheyenne climbed back into the saddle, the mount rose snorting and then made a kneeing sound. It seemed to be in pain. Oh no, this is all my fault. I should have taken a closer look at that tree. I'm so sorry, Falconheart. She didn't get out more. The stallion, however, shook his head as if to contradict her. Yes, of course it's my fault. I should have paid attention to your signals. I'm so incredibly sorry. Again, the horse seemed to deny her statement and snorted. At that moment, Adukas came to slide down the slope next to the tree trunk, and then laid down, panting violently next to the four-legged friend. The two of them absolutely need to rest. I demand far too much from them. I shouldn't have dragged them into this whole thing. I should have left them at home. Then they wouldn't be as bad off as they are now. But how would I have gotten to the lab and escaped? And Arukas would have followed me anyway. I hope I can make up for this sometime. I'm so sorry. Cheyenne had a huge guilty conscience. The feelings of guilt were unbearable. Everything seemed to be her fault, and she wished at that moment that she had never been born. For the sake of her companions, she would grit her teeth. She finally had to be able to think clearly again, but this was easier said than done. Despair threatened to overwhelm her again as she looked ahead and discovered a forest path leading to a village. At first the girl thought it was just a daydream or a hallucination, but when, after several blinks, wooden houses could still be seen in the distance, Cheyenne breathed a sigh of relief. A village! I don't believe it. So we still do have a little luck. She made Falconheart go on, and he limped towards the wide forest path. Arukas ran beside the horse, and the extent of the scuffle with the white wolf came to light. Some bloody wounds sparked on the fairy wolf's neck and chest. The girl did not know what she could do for her two four-legged friends. There was no money to pay a veterinarian or buy remedies herself, and she did not know which herbs would be needed to make a homemade wound ointment, and would probably have to buy the ingredients as well. But she was responsible for her pets, and these wounds had to be treated. Somehow she would manage it. Maybe there was work in the village, or she could exchange something. However, she quickly discarded the latter idea. The only thing I have are 2 apples, my bow, and my pocket knife. I don't want to give up my bow, and my pocket knife neither. I need the 2 things. And who would want to trade for apples? Besides, I promised them to Falconheart. She just had to wait and hope. Finally, they arrived at the entrance of the village. At the first 2 small wooden huts, a large yellow cloth was clamped, which greeted the passerbys. The brown lettering revealed the name of the village. Welcome to Media Silva, the village in the middle of the forest of Luminastrel. Media Silva? I've never heard of that name before. Still, Cheyenne was glad to be here. It was a small village, no bigger than La Sepia. Some of the houses looked like trees. They were all brown and green, built of wood and of different sizes. Some rose into the air, while others had only 1 floor. Above the girl's head were wooden bridges that connected some houses. It looked like the area up there was accessible to everyone through stairs to the side of the houses. Cheyenne saw a few stalls and shops where people lined up to the wooden bridges. The sandy road they were currently on seemed to be the widest in the village. From it went some alleys that led to other houses. Down here there were not as many people to see as above, and further ahead stood a carriage with 2 horses harnessed. The whole village seemed warm and welcoming. The girl discovered a stone trough filled with water, which served as drinking trough for the mounts. She steered Falconheart towards it and jumped off his back. It felt unusual to stand on the ground again, and after the long time in the saddle she had slight pain all over her body. But she suspected that it would be gone right away. Cheyenne tied the stallion to the post next to the trough, and she greedily began to drink. Arukas also came next to the trough and shoveled the cool water into his mouth with his tongue. Next to the stone mold was a small staircase leading to a house behind it, and the girl sat down exhausted. She looked at her companions for a moment before resting her head in her hands and just sitting there. For a few minutes she was unable to do anything. Then she raised her head again and examined the wounds of the fairy wolf, who had meanwhile laid down next to her. They were not very deep and did not look as fateful at the second glance as they did some time before. These few scratches would heal well on their own and did not necessarily need treatment. Cheyenne now turned to the injured leg of her horse. The stallion's foot was bent, and he kept pulling it up a little as soon as the hoof touched the ground. This doesn't look good. Falconheart really needs help. The girl looked down and stared at her feet. The feelings of guilt came back, and she did not know how she could have helped her horse. She was so absorbed in her mental reproaches that she did not notice how someone approached her. A meter in front of Cheyenne, the person stopped and looked at her. The girl noticed the 2 feet in front of her and looked up to the stranger. In front of her stood a young man with impressively beautiful ice blue hair. On the sides of his head they reached almost to the ground. In front they stood off in almost all directions, and at the back of his head they seemed to be fluffy and shoulder length. The hair was very well groomed and made the man look noble. His eyes were clear and also ice blue. Rarely had she seen someone so beautiful. If this guy lived in the capital, he would certainly be a nobleman who would never even think of even looking at someone from the Undercity. So Cheyenne could hardly believe that he was talking to her. "Hey, pretty angel, you look like fate hasn't been kind to you."